But one morning, something terrible happened. As they ate, Mama Amino suddenly held her chest, her face pale, and collapsed onto the floor. Tunda and his siblings watched in horror as Papa Amino rushed to her side. "Tunda, stay with your brother and sister. I'm taking Mama to the hospital," Papa Amino said, his voice filled with fear. He quickly lifted Mama Amino and ran out, leaving the children behind. Hours went by, and the children waited, clinging to each other, hoping their parents would return soon. Just as the sun began to set, a neighbor came to their home. Her face was full of sorrow.
"My children," she said softly, "your parents, they were in an accident on the way to the hospital. They didn't survive." Tunda felt his heart shatter. Aid cried, and little Bola clung to her brother, too young to fully understand what had happened. In one day, their lives had changed forever. Over the next few days, neighbors came to comfort them, but no one could take in all three children. Some offered food, but it soon became clear that Tunda, Aid, and Bola would have to find a way to survive on their own. Determined to keep his family together, Tunda, though just a boy, decided he would take responsibility for his younger siblings. Life was not easy for the Amino children. They had little food, and the house felt empty without their parents' laughter and warmth. Tunde knew he needed to find a way to provide for his siblings. He began looking for work, taking any small job he could find, fetching water, carrying firewood, and even helping farmers in the fields. Neighbors would sometimes give him a small amount of money or a little food. Ade also helped as best as he could, often going with Tunda to work. Bola, though young, tried to keep the house tidy, singing softly to herself to feel closer to their mother. One day, as Tunda was helping a wealthy man in the village with his farm work, the man noticed how hard Tunda worked, despite his young age. "Why are you working so hard, young one?" the man asked, curious. Tunda explained their story, and the man, moved by their plight, offered him a more stable job with better pay. He even gave Tunda and his siblings some school supplies so they could continue their education. Tunde was grateful and vowed to work even harder, knowing it was what his parents would have wanted. The years went by, and through hard work and determination, the Amino siblings survived. Tunde and Ade worked whenever they could, and Bola learned to sew, making small clothes to sell in the market. They faced many struggles, often going to bed hungry or cold, but they never gave up. One day, a man from the city visited their village, looking for bright young students to sponsor for higher education. Tunde, known for his intelligence and hard work, was selected for the scholarship. With the support of the scholarship, he moved to the city to study, promising his siblings that he would return and take care of them. After Tunde moved to the city to pursue his scholarship, he sent letters and money home as often as he could. But over time, life in the city became overwhelming. His studies, work, and the struggle to survive in a busy, unfamiliar place wore him down. The city had promised hope, but instead, it swallowed him in its harshness. When Tunde graduated, he was eager to reunite with his siblings and bring them to the city. But as he struggled to find a stable job, he began missing the deadlines for sending money, and eventually, he stopped writing altogether. Months turned into years, and Tunde lost contact with Aid and Bola. He sank into despair, ashamed to reach out until he had something to show for his years of absence. Unable to find steady work, Tunde moved to a rough part of town, where he could barely afford rent in a crumbling apartment. He did odd jobs to survive, cleaning, delivering packages, and sometimes going without food for days. He felt lost and defeated, haunted by the memory of his siblings and the promise he had made to care for them. Meanwhile, back in the village, Aid and Bola waited for news of their brother. Days turned into months, and then years, with no word from Tunda. They feared he had been lost to the city forever. Aid, now grown, took on the role of protector and provider. He managed to grow his small business, eventually moving to the city with Bola to start fresh. Together, they worked hard and slowly built a life, never giving up hope that one day they might find Tunde. Years later, Aid's business thrived, and Bola's sewing shop had become a well-known boutique. They had worked their way up from poverty, and their success was proof of their resilience. But deep down, they both carried a void, missing the brother they had once known. One sunny afternoon, Aide was driving through the busy streets of the city. His new car, a symbol of how far he had come, was sleek and polished, turning heads as he navigated through traffic. He was on his way to meet a client when, out of nowhere, a figure stepped in front of his car. Aide slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. He hit the man. Aide jumped out of the car, his heart pounding as he rushed to the figure lying on the road. The man was thin and looked exhausted, his clothes worn and his face marked with lines of hardship. But as Aide looked closer, his breath caught in his throat. "Tunde?" he whispered, disbelief flooding his voice. The man looked up, his eyes hollow but still familiar. It was Tunda. After all these years, his older brother had been right here, living in the same city. Tunda struggled to sit up, squinting in the sunlight as he recognized the voice. "Ade, is it really you?" he murmured, his voice trembling. Aide helped him up, tears filling his eyes. "It's me, Tunde. Where have you been all these years? We thought you were gone." Tunda's shoulders slumped, and he looked down, ashamed. "I tried, Aide. I tried to make a life, to find work, but the city broke me. I had nothing to show for myself. I was ashamed." Ada put a firm hand on his brother's shoulder. "You don't need to be ashamed, Tunda. We've been looking for you all this time. Bola and I are here. We've been waiting." Aide helped Tunde into the car, and they drove back to his home, where Bola was waiting. When they arrived, she gasped, her eyes filling with tears as she saw her eldest brother walk through the door. She rushed forward, embracing him tightly, her voice choked with emotion. "Tunde, we thought we'd lost you," Bola sobbed, clinging to him. Tunde, overwhelmed by their love and forgiveness, wept as well. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought I'd failed you both." But Ade and Bola only smiled through their tears. They didn't care about the past. All they cared about was that their brother had returned. After their emotional reunion, the Amino siblings felt a powerful sense of closure. They had come through suffering and hardship, but their family bond had withstood the test of time. Now, reunited and stronger together, they wanted to do something special, to honor their parents' memory in the village that had seen them grow. One day, as they sat together reminiscing about the past, Ade suggested, "Let's go back to the village. It's time we honor Mama and Papa and share our story with the people who helped us survive." Tunde and Bola agreed, their hearts filled with warmth as they thought of the small, quiet village they had left so many years ago. The siblings planned their return, deciding they would rebuild their parents' old home, turning it into a community center. They envisioned it as a place where children could learn, families could gather, and everyone could remember the values their parents had instilled in them: kindness, resilience, and hard work. They also decided to establish a scholarship fund in their parents' names, ensuring that the children of the village would always have a path to education. When they finally arrived back in the village, word spread like wildfire. People came out of their homes, shocked and overjoyed to see the Amino siblings, who had once been orphaned children struggling to survive, now returning as successful, compassionate adults. The villagers remembered the three siblings who had faced such hardship and felt a mix of awe and pride in their resilience. As they walked through the village, familiar faces approached them, sharing stories of their parents. One elderly woman, a close friend of Mama Amino, took Bola's hands and said, "Your mother was the kindest soul. She would be so proud of all of you." Tunde, Ade, and Bola were moved, their hearts swelling with both sadness and joy. It felt as though their parents were there with them, watching and smiling from above. The next day, the entire village gathered at the Amino's family home. The siblings had renovated it into a beautiful community center, with bright walls and open spaces filled with books, toys, and learning tools. Outside, a plaque displayed their parents' names, along with a message, "In loving memory of Mama and Papa Amino, whose kindness, strength, and love continue to guide us." Tunde spoke to the crowd, his voice clear and strong. "When we lost our parents, we thought we had lost everything. But through your support, through each other, we survived. Today, we want to give back to the village that gave us so much. This community center is open to everyone, a place for learning, laughter, and love, just as Mama and Papa would have wanted." The villagers cheered, touched by the siblings' tribute. Then, Ade announced the scholarship program, promising that no child in the village would have to stop schooling due to lack of funds. Bola pledged to teach young girls sewing and other skills, empowering them to support themselves. Together, the Amino siblings committed to making their parents' legacy a living part of the community. In the weeks that followed, the Amino Center became a hub of activity. Children gathered after school to read, learn, and play. Families held gatherings, and young people attended classes on various skills. The Amino siblings were a constant presence, guiding, teaching, and encouraging everyone who came through the doors. Their parents' dream of a better life for them had become a reality, not just for the Amino siblings, but for the entire village. The Amino story of struggle and triumph became a legend that spread, inspiring neighboring villages and even people in the city. Life in the city had been harsh for Tunde, but it hadn't been without moments of hope and warmth. During those early years of struggle, Tunde had met a young woman named Aisha. She was kind-hearted and had a strength that Tunde admired. They shared quiet moments in the bustling city, talking about their dreams and finding comfort in each other's company. Though their bond grew strong, Aisha's family was wealthy and traditional. When Tunde's financial struggles became apparent, her family disapproved, warning her against a life with someone who seemed to have no future. Torn between love and her family's wishes, Aisha ultimately chose to leave Tunde, saying, "I can't marry a man with nothing. My family won't allow it." Her rejection left Tunde heartbroken. He respected her decision, but felt a deep sense of loss. Determined to make something of himself despite the setback, he threw himself into his studies and work. Over time, he worked his way up, eventually reconnecting with his siblings and transforming their family's story. Now, years later, after reuniting with Ade and Bola and finding success, Tunde's life had come full circle. His family was thriving, and he had found peace in his accomplishments and the legacy he was building in the village. One day, as Tunde was walking through the market in the city, he heard a familiar voice call his name. He turned to see Aisha standing there, her face a mix of surprise and admiration. She was dressed in fine clothes, and her expression softened as she looked at him. "Tunde, it's really you," she said, stepping closer. Tunde nodded, a polite but distant smile on his face. "Yes, Aisha. It's been a long time." They began to talk, and she soon learned of all he had achieved. She listened, impressed by his resilience and moved by his story of overcoming poverty to create a meaningful legacy for his family. Aisha could see how much he had grown, how he was no longer the struggling young man she had once known. "You've become someone remarkable, Tundi," she said softly. "I made a mistake years ago. I see that now. If you're willing, I would like to be part of your life again. I see the man you've become, and I regret not staying by your side." But Tunde shook his head, a gentle but firm look in his eyes. "Aisha, I cared for you deeply, and I wanted to build a life with you. But when I needed someone most, you chose to leave. That taught me a lot about love and loyalty. Now, I know my worth, and I know I deserve someone who will stand by me through every season, rich or poor." Aisha looked down, feeling the weight of his words. "I understand," she said, her voice laced with regret. "I hope you can forgive me." Tunde gave a small nod. "I forgave you long ago, Aisha. I hold no anger in my heart. But we are on different paths now." With a final nod, he turned and walked away, feeling a sense of closure and peace. Aisha's rejection had once left him broken, but now he was stronger, wiser, and ready to open his heart to a love that would value him for who he was, not for what he had. Months later, Tunde met a woman named Amara, a teacher in the village. She was compassionate, humble, and saw beyond his successes to the man he truly was. They shared dreams of building a community, raising a family, and supporting one another through life's highs and lows. Amara admired his resilience and strength, and Tunde found in her the love he had always hoped for, one that stood firm no matter the circumstances. In time, they married in a simple but beautiful ceremony in the village, surrounded by family, friends, and the community they had both grown to love. Their love was genuine and strong, built on a foundation of trust, respect, and shared values. While her brothers focused on expanding the family's legacy in business and community work, Bola poured her energy and creativity into her passion, fashion. Ever since she was a child, she had loved designing clothes, stitching patterns, and playing with fabrics. In the early years, her sewing skills had been a way to help her brothers make ends meet, but as she grew, it became clear that Bola's talent was something extraordinary. In the city, Bola opened a small boutique, starting with just a handful of designs inspired by traditional African patterns and vibrant colors. Her style was a blend of African heritage and modern elegance, each piece carrying a story from her roots. At first, her shop attracted locals who appreciated her unique touch, but soon, word began to spread. Customers from neighboring cities started traveling just to get a piece of Bola's work. Her brand, Bola's Threads, began gaining recognition as a symbol of authentic African beauty and craftsmanship. One day, a well-known fashion blogger from South Africa visited Bola's boutique and was captivated by the elegance and originality of her designs. She posted photos of Bola's creations online, and within days, the boutique's social media accounts exploded with followers from across Africa and even Europe. Orders poured in, and soon Bola found herself hiring more tailors and expanding her studio to keep up with the demand. Her designs caught the attention of fashion icons and celebrities, and not long after, a European fashion agency invited her to showcase her work at a prestigious fashion show in Paris. Bola was both nervous and excited. This was a dream come true, an opportunity to take her family's legacy, her roots, and her artistry to the global stage. Arriving in Paris was surreal. Bola had never imagined that her journey from the village, sewing clothes with simple fabric, would lead her here. Her designs dazzled the audience, each piece telling a story of resilience, culture, and pride. The intricate patterns and bold colors drew admiration from the fashion world, with critics praising her ability to bring African heritage to the forefront of modern fashion. Her collection was a huge success, and Bola's Threads became an international sensation almost overnight. With newfound fame, Bola expanded her brand to cities across Europe and Africa, opening boutiques in Lagos, Johannesburg, Paris, and London. She launched a training program for young African designers, offering scholarships to students who dreamed of making it in the fashion industry but lacked the resources. Through her program, she taught them not just the craft of fashion, but the values of resilience, creativity, and authenticity. Despite her global success, Bola remained humble, never forgetting the family and community that had shaped her journey. She often traveled back to her village, where she hosted workshops, teaching young girls the art of sewing and design. She invested in local artisans, creating jobs and empowering them to take pride in their work. Years later, Bola's brand had become a household name, known not just for its exquisite designs, but for its commitment to African empowerment and cultural heritage. Her journey from the village to international fame inspired countless young people, showing them that dreams, no matter how big, could be achieved through hard work, passion, and authenticity. Bola's family was immensely proud of her, especially her brothers. They watched in awe as their little sister's dreams transformed into a worldwide movement, one that celebrated their heritage and gave back to their community. In honor of her success, the government recognized Bola with an award for cultural contribution, and the village held a grand celebration in her name. Villagers danced, sang songs of pride, and spoke of the Amino family's legacy, a family that had overcome loss, hardship, and poverty to become a beacon of hope, strength, and achievement. In her acceptance speech, Bola said, "I dedicate my success to my parents, who taught us the value of resilience and kindness, and to my brothers, who stood by me through every challenge. But above all, I dedicate it to the village that raised me. This is where my roots are, and I will never forget it." Her words echoed in the hearts of everyone who listened, a reminder that true success is not just about fame or wealth, but about honoring where you come from and using your blessings to uplift others. As Bola's Threads expanded across Africa and Europe, Bola found herself traveling constantly between cities. In one of her many trips to Lagos, she met a man named Kunle. Kunle was strikingly handsome, with a charming smile and an effortless way with words. He was always dressed in the latest fashions, and his charisma drew people to him like moths to a flame. At first, Bola was smitten. Kunle seemed to have a passion for life, and he treated her like she was the only woman in the world, showering her with compliments and grand gestures. Their whirlwind romance seemed perfect, and Kunle quickly became a regular presence in her life. He joined her at events, and she enjoyed introducing him as her partner. For a while, everything seemed to be going well. Kunle made her laugh, made her feel seen, and filled her days with excitement. But as time went on, Bola began to notice things about Kunle that troubled her. Kunle rarely worked, and he didn't seem to have any clear goals or ambitions. Instead, he spent his days lounging, scrolling through social media, and hanging out with friends. He would often ask Bola for money, at first for small things, and later for bigger expenses. Bola, generous by nature, didn't think much of it in the beginning. She was successful, and she wanted to share her success with the man she loved. But soon, it became clear that Kunle wasn't just borrowing here and there. He was relying on her for everything. When Bola was busy managing her business, Kunle would spend her money on expensive clothes, flashy nights out, and gifts for himself. She began hearing rumors that he was often seen with other women, dressed in clothes she had paid for, flaunting a lifestyle that she funded. One evening, after a long week of work, Bola decided to surprise Kunle by visiting his favorite lounge in Lagos. She wanted to spend some time together, away from the pressures of work. As she walked in, she saw him laughing and chatting with several women, his arm around one of them. They were dressed extravagantly, clearly enjoying a night out on her tab. Bola felt a mix of anger and hurt rising within her. She waited until Kunle noticed her, his face turning from surprise to discomfort. Pulling him aside, she confronted him, asking, "Kunle, what is this? Do you think this is what I deserve after everything I've done for you?" Kunle shrugged, feigning innocence. "Bola, it's just a night out. Why are you making a big deal out of it?" She looked at him, feeling a heavy weight in her heart. "I thought you loved me, Kunle. But it seems you love my money and the lifestyle it gives you more than you care about me." Kunle sighed, his charm fading into indifference. "Bola, you're successful. You can afford this life. Why does it matter if I spend a little here and there?" In that moment, Bola realized that Kunle would never change. His interest in her was tied to her success, not to who she was. She felt a surge of strength within her as she took a step back, her voice calm but firm. "I don't need someone who only sees my value in what I can give. I deserve someone who respects me for who I am, not what I have." Without waiting for a response, she turned and left, leaving Kunle behind. It was a painful moment, but one that she knew was necessary. Over the following days, Bola threw herself into her work, finding comfort in her passion and the love of her family. Her brothers, Tunda and Ade, supported her through the heartbreak, reminding her of her worth and the strength she had always carried within her. Months passed, and Bola slowly healed. She focused on herself, her family, and her community. Her fashion brand continued to grow, and she found joy in her work, in giving back, and in building a legacy that honored her family. After Bola's painful experience with Kunle, she knew she deserved someone who loved her for who she was, not for her success or wealth. She moved forward, focusing on her work and the people who supported her dreams genuinely. But Kunle wasn't ready to let go. He would appear at her events, call her repeatedly, and even send flowers, pleading for forgiveness. He promised he had changed, that he was ready to be the man she deserved. But Bola remained strong. She had learned from her experience, realizing that Kunle's interest lay more in her status than in her heart. She didn't want to fall back into a relationship that drained her of respect and self-worth. Despite his apologies, she knew she had made the right decision to leave. Not long after, Bola met another man named Jide. Jide was wealthy, successful, and respected in the business world. He had a commanding presence and a sharp mind, which intrigued Bola. At first, she was drawn to his confidence and the way he seemed to pursue life with purpose. They started dating, and Bola enjoyed their time together, finding comfort in Jide's accomplishments and the values they seemed to share. But as their relationship deepened, Bola began to notice Jide's other side, a side that troubled her. Jide was proud of his achievements, but his pride often turned into arrogance. He expected everything to go his way, and dismissed the opinions of those he considered beneath him. When they had disagreements, Jide was quick to belittle her views, often brushing off her ideas and contributions as if they didn't matter. Bola's success as a designer had taught her to stand tall, but in her relationship with Jide, she found herself often questioning her worth. Jide would praise her beauty and her success, but only when it suited him. He would speak of her accomplishments at events, but would treat her opinions as secondary in private. One evening, after an argument over a business decision she was passionate about, Bola finally realized that Jide's pride went beyond self-confidence. It was rooted in a lack of respect for others, including her. She thought of her values, the strength her parents had taught her, and the journey that had brought her this far. She realized that no amount of wealth or success could replace respect, kindness, and true partnership. Sitting across from Jide, she took a deep breath and spoke firmly. "Jide, I've worked too hard and come too far to be with someone who doesn't respect me. I value myself, my ideas, and my voice, and I need a partner who does the same." Jide looked taken aback, dismissing her words with a wave. "Bola, you're overreacting. You're successful because you're with me now. Remember that." But Bola didn't flinch. "I was strong before I met you, and I will be strong without you." With that, she left, ending yet another relationship that did not honor her self-worth. Though it was painful, Bola felt liberated, knowing that she had chosen herself over settling for less. In the months that followed, Bola focused on her brand, her community, and her family. She continued to grow. Bola's threads and her commitment to empowering young women inspired those around her. She was at peace, proud of the life she was building for herself. She had a long phone discussion with the brothers. Why is that she is not lucky in love? She doesn't want to even marry again. But the brothers encouraged her to keep trying. She was sad. Bola's fashion empire, Bola's Threads, had grown into an influential brand, celebrated for its fusion of African heritage with modern elegance. She was preparing to host a grand charity event in Accra to support young designers and unemployed youth, hoping to give them opportunities and mentorship in the fashion industry. The event drew people from all over, some dressed in Bola's signature designs, others eager to learn from her story and find a way to move forward. Among the crowd was a young man named Kofi. He stood near the entrance, looking out of place and uncertain. His clothes were worn, his eyes tired, and he seemed to shrink back from the glitz and glamour of the event. Kofi had been unemployed for over 5 years, his dreams of making a living in the city slowly fading. Feeding himself had become a daily struggle, and he had nearly given up hope. Kofi had heard about Bola's charity event through a friend. Despite his reservations, he had decided to attend, hoping he might find a lead, a connection, or even just a spark of inspiration to help him out of the dark place he found himself in. As he wandered through the crowd, he spotted Bola herself. She was speaking with a group of young designers, her presence commanding yet warm. Kofi admired her from afar, amazed by how someone from a humble background like his own had risen to such heights. He had read about her journey, her struggles, and how she had turned her talent and determination into something extraordinary. As Kofi watched, he accidentally bumped into one of the waiters, spilling a tray of drinks onto the floor. The guests around him looked his way, some with irritation, others with pity. Embarrassed, Kofi began to back away, but Bola noticed the commotion and approached him. "Are you all right?" she asked gently, her eyes kind. Kofi looked down, trying to hide his embarrassment. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I was just hoping, maybe, to find some work." Bola could see the exhaustion and desperation in his eyes. She had seen that same look in her own reflection years ago, when she was struggling to make ends meet. She felt a pang of compassion and decided to give him a chance. "What's your name?" she asked, offering him a comforting smile. "Kofi," he replied, surprised that she was even speaking to him. "Well, Kofi, I believe everyone deserves a chance," Bola said. "Why don't you come by my office tomorrow morning? Let's see if we can find a place for you on the team." Kofi's face lit up, disbelief and hope mingling in his expression. "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I won't disappoint you." The next day, Kofi arrived at Bola's Threads headquarters, nervous but determined. Bola personally interviewed him, learning about his background, his skills, and his struggles. She discovered that, despite his lack of formal training, Kofi had a natural eye for detail and a talent for working with his hands. She decided to hire him as an assistant in her workshop, where he would learn the ropes of the fashion industry. Under Bola's mentorship, Kofi began to thrive. Though he started with simple tasks, such as organizing fabrics and running errands, he quickly picked up new skills. Bola encouraged him to learn, guiding him through the basics of design, sewing, and tailoring. She introduced him to the team, making sure he felt valued and supported. Kofi worked tirelessly, grateful for the opportunity. He arrived early every morning, eager to prove himself and show Bola that her faith in him wasn't misplaced. Over time, he learned more than he had ever thought possible, and his confidence grew. Bola watched his transformation with pride, remembering her own journey and how someone's belief in her had helped her rise. After months of dating, Kofi felt it was time for Bola to meet his family. He had mentioned his family a few times, but he had never gone into detail about their wealth or status. To Bola, he was simply Kofi, the hard-working, kind-hearted man she had grown to love. On a warm Saturday afternoon, Kofi took Bola to his parents' home in the heart of the city. As they approached the estate, Bola's eyes widened at the sight before her. They entered through a large gate, and a sprawling mansion stood ahead, surrounded by manicured gardens and luxurious cars parked in the driveway. She looked at Kofi in astonishment, a question forming on her lips, but he simply smiled and held her hand, leading her inside. Kofi's parents greeted them warmly. His father, a tall, dignified man, was one of the city's most prominent billionaires. His mother was graceful and elegant, with a gentle smile that put Bola at ease. They welcomed her into their home, treating her with respect and kindness. Over dinner, Kofi's family shared stories of their business ventures and philanthropic work, and Bola began to realize just how influential and wealthy they were. After dinner, when Kofi and Bola found a quiet moment together, she looked at him in disbelief. "Kofi," she whispered, "your family, they're incredibly wealthy. I don't understand. Why were you struggling so much in the city when they have all this?" Kofi nodded, knowing this question would come. "It's a tradition in our family," he explained. "My father has a golden rule for each of us children. Before we can inherit anything from the family, we have to build a life of our own. We have to make it on our own for at least 6 years, without help from the family wealth." Bola listened, intrigued, as he continued. "My father believes that true success and self-worth come from facing life's challenges without depending on others. He wants us to know the value of hard work, to learn the lessons that life has to offer, and to find love without the influence of money. I've been on my own, hustling and trying to survive, for the past 5 years. I still have 1 year to go." Bola took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. She was both surprised and impressed by Kofi's family values. Despite their wealth, they wanted their children to earn their success and find love independently. She admired Kofi even more for his resilience and humility. Over the following days, Kofi's parents grew fond of Bola. They saw her strength, her success, and her love for Kofi, and they appreciated that she was with him for who he was, not for his family's wealth. She had built her own empire, just as they expected their children to do, and they respected her journey. One day, Bola noticed that Kofi had an eye for innovative designs. She asked him to sketch some ideas, and his drawings surprised her. They were fresh, unique, and full of potential. Recognizing his talent, she promoted him to a junior designer, giving him the chance to contribute to the brand's new collection. His designs brought a youthful energy to the collection, and clients soon began to request his pieces by name. As Kofi's career flourished, he became an inspiration to others. His journey from unemployment and despair to a successful designer under Bola's threads was a testament to the power of resilience and opportunity. Bola's faith in him had given him the platform to realize his potential, and in return, he brought innovation and dedication to her brand. Years later, Kofi's name was known throughout the fashion world. He became one of Bola's most trusted designers, and together, they expanded Bola's threads across new markets. At a major fashion event, Kofi took the stage, and in his speech, he thanked Bola for the chance she had given him. "Without Bola's kindness and belief in me, I don't know where I'd be today. She saw something in me when no one else did, and because of her, I found my path." Bola, sitting in the audience, smiled proudly. She knew that helping Kofi had been the right choice, not just for her brand, but for the legacy of compassion and opportunity that she hoped to leave behind. As Kofi grew within Bola's threads, so did the connection between him and Bola. They worked closely, often spending late nights together in the studio, discussing ideas, reviewing sketches, and planning the future of the brand. What had started as mentorship evolved into a deep friendship, marked by laughter, shared stories, and dreams of what they wanted to achieve. Kofi admired Bola's kindness and resilience. He saw in her a woman who had built her life from the ground up, who treated everyone with respect and humility despite her success. She, in turn, was inspired by Kofi's dedication and gratitude. He had faced hardship, yet he remained optimistic, eager to learn and make a meaningful life for himself. The two found themselves sharing more than just ideas. They shared pieces of their lives and hearts. One evening, after a successful showcase of their latest collection, Bola invited Kofi to join her for a quiet dinner to celebrate. They found a cozy restaurant with dim lighting and soft music, and as they talked, they both felt the bond between them deepen. Bola looked at Kofi, noticing how he had transformed from the young man she had met at her event into a confident designer. She realized how proud she was of him, and how much she had grown to care for him. At one point in the evening, Kofi looked at her with a warmth in his eyes that he couldn't hide any longer. He took a deep breath and spoke softly. "Bola, I've admired you from the moment I met you, not just for what you've done for me, but for the person you are. You've given me a chance, taught me to believe in myself, and somewhere along the way, I've found myself caring about you deeply." Bola's heart raced. She had often felt something special when she was around Kofi, but she had been careful not to let herself dwell on it, thinking it might be one-sided. Hearing him voice his feelings made her heart swell with a happiness she hadn't felt in a long time. "Kofi," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, "I've watched you grow, overcome obstacles, and I'm so proud of you. You've become more than just a friend. You've become someone very important to me." They shared a gentle smile, both feeling the weight of the moment. From that night, their relationship slowly blossomed, built on respect, shared goals, and an unspoken understanding of the hardships each had faced. They kept their relationship private, knowing how important it was to balance their personal and professional lives. Over time, their love grew deeper. They became partners not just in work, but in life. Kofi became her confidant, her biggest supporter, and the one person she could trust completely. Bola, in turn, encouraged Kofi to dream even bigger, helping him see a future he had once thought was impossible. One evening, Kofi's father invited Bola for a private talk. "Bola," he began, "our family values hard work and integrity, and you've shown both in building your fashion brand. We're grateful that our son found someone as grounded and compassionate as you." He paused, his expression thoughtful. "But there's one thing I must ask of you. Kofi's journey is not yet complete. He has one more year left to fulfill our family's tradition. In this last year, he'll continue to build his path and prepare himself for what lies ahead. Are you willing to stand by him through this final stage, even if it means enduring some hardships?" Bola nodded without hesitation. "I fell in love with Kofi for who he is, not for what he has. I've faced hardships in my life too, and I'll gladly stand by him through this. He deserves to complete his journey, and I'll be there to support him every step of the way." Kofi's father smiled, satisfied with her answer. Over the next year, Bola and Kofi continued to work side by side. Bola supported him as he pushed himself in his projects, determined to meet his family's expectations. They both faced ups and downs, but their bond only grew stronger. They learned to communicate openly, trust each other's instincts, and support one another through every challenge. Finally, as the year came to an end, Kofi's parents gathered the family for a special celebration. Kofi had successfully fulfilled the 6-year requirement, and his family welcomed him with pride, honoring his resilience, hard work, and dedication. They were impressed not only by his achievements, but by the loyalty and love he had shown Bola through it all. Kofi's father stood before the family, raising a glass in honor of his son. "Kofi," he began, "you have proven that you are not only capable, but that you have the values and strength to carry on our legacy. You've shown that you understand the true meaning of wealth, not just in money, but in character, resilience, and love." Turning to Bola, he added, "And you, Bola, have been a pillar of strength for him. Your love for our son has shown us that you are a part of this family, not because of what we have, but because of who you are." In that moment, Kofi's family welcomed Bola with open arms, and Kofi was officially given access to his inheritance. But for Kofi, the real prize was not the wealth. It was the knowledge that he had earned Bola's love, proven himself, and become the man he wanted to be.